Now, my bag is not very big. Within the zip pocket of its front face, I keep more delicate items, like my phone and earplugs. If I put a gallon of milk inside the cargo volume of its other larger compartment, which rests against my back when I'm wearing the bag, then there wouldn't be much room for anything else. As it is, I keep my water bottle and my combination lock among the half dozen toiletries regularly within my bag at any given time. Upon the wall, underneath the countertop, there are two sets of electrical outlets, one closer to the left locker, one closer to the right. I had my face buried within my bag at the time, looking specifically amidst the clutter for the combination lock and my stick of deodorant. When I first got there and dropped down and unzipped my bag, I pulled out the water bottle, which was easy to find, set it upon the counter, and went about locating the other two. My left hand holding the bag up in front of my face and allowing for light to shine in, and my right arm inserted onto the high wrist forearm rummaging through it. I'm serious though, within 5 seconds, the full time frame that the bag was in front of my face, within 5 seconds, as I distractedly rifled through it, standing immediately before the mirror, within 5 total seconds that preoccupation beguiled my periphery of stimulus. Within all of 5 seconds, two 9-year-old Hispanic boys materialized from without the previously absent entirety, discounting the one other aforementioned patron, invaded my near intimate semisphere of my personal space below my waist and split me between themselves as they both connected phone chargers connected to smartphones to their respective outlets, one on my right, one on my left. They surprised the shit out of me, I can tell you that much, and I gave a startled, unrestrained "what the fuck?" caused by my shock at their sudden appearance. It was like one moment there's nothing and no one, just me, myself, and one other guy. Many feet away, I raise my bag to my face. A second later, I take it away, and somehow, pow! There they are, right there. Way too close for comfort or decency, and broaching well past appropriate boundaries. Like they jumped out of the goddamn bottom lockers. The one on my right, the one closest to me, he remained on his feet, but was bending over, hunched above his phone, which was almost horizontal in his hands, out front below him as he scrolled it. His waist bent away from mine, his little fanny hardly a foot from my pelvis, at my right hip. The one to the left, was descended to his knees, his angle turned slightly acute towards me, in reference to the mirror perpendicular straight ahead. His hands extended out at chest level, as if in prayer, except cupping the phone between the palms, waiting for it to power on. His pubescent, angelic little face deliberately, or else dire obliviously, placed a foot and a half from my cock. And it's like, oh my lazy fucking lord, how long shall you linger and delay to destroy? How long will you procrastinate to vanquish this vile foe? For these awful heathens so surely put the hic in dehicable. And there's no way that they could anticipate my actions with such precision. But if by the other half of trivial chance I had not elevated my bag to my face for that brief moment, would the boys still have approached a grown man and a stranger so carelessly? Else would they have employed a little etiquette, adhered even if mindlessly to less conscious social custom, and with some minute entreat at least so encroached, or were they distinctly instructed to disregard discretion? But that much, of course, I cannot know. The timing and the speed of it all, though, that's why I'm sure they were sent. I just wonder if they would have at all hesitated had my eyes been present, or beelined it towards my cock. White Hicks also, the pale plague pathology around Holiday's Lake, and where I still am. They would parade their children, but around Lake Holiday's Lake, they would parade their children out too at times, synchronized to my passing by with my dogs, in some hideous form of dissemblance. But I mean, even that was wide out in the open, subject to surveillance and observation by any and everyone within view. But these filthy father-fucking heathens to send in 2 9-year-olds and direct them unto such behavior and unto such precarious closeness, or else that this infectious people parasite instills in its youth absolutely no discretion or polite or decent or modest conduct whatsoever within such intimate enclosures, otherwise deserted except for the other guy who saw the whole thing. Good fucking God, man. But let me just say, I've never been so relieved to find the eyes of a middle-aged white man gauging me in the locker room. And I'm happy that he was there, even though I'm certain that he was there, to perhaps, and hopefully, as far as they're concerned, I'm sure, attest to my receptive intrigue, but to gauge my reaction regardless. And while nothing, I'm also sure, obligates him unto a full and faithful disclosure of details, perhaps he did not omit in his account unto whosoever sent him to bear witness the disgusted deep glottal ugh of my offended displeasure as I abruptly grabbed my bottle off the counter, my bag still and already in my hand, and emphatically displaced myself onto one of the far lockers across the way, beyond the white guy, to there quickly bring forth the pertinent items, close my bag within the locker, spin the lock's combination, and clasp it shut upon the locker's face, my back turned at them and cursing under my breath all the while, before exiting out onto the workout floor, but to display my blunt disdain for their fathers, their dozens of uncles, their scores of male cousins, and for the little bastards themselves, whose blatant misconduct breached even the unassuming, naive oblivion of little boys. And at least white people have the decency to be horribly afraid of me, from whatever attention or cautionary preface precedes my presence, and so hesitate to put what most they so cherish so close to and so hidden from view with what terrifies them so. And it's impossible that these dickless fogs but speculate in mispay that of necessity they both cause scene and then scrutinize one's interaction within it, yet more or less like war games notwithstanding, and purely evaluative. So this is some more drastic measure. Another message. Like the charade with Gorgeous Maria, a message. But unlike the almost sarcastic, even silly tone of that encounter, this one is much more menacing. This one's like the rape van, following me out from the deserted McDonald's parking lot. Some more sinister sickness underlies this, and it terrifies me, the thought of finding myself alone anymore again isolated with any of these corrupt, savage delinquents. And let me so now warn the reader. Should you ever find yourself in a sordid little burg called Oswego, or anywhere really within range of here, maneuver careful through Montgomery. Steer clear of the workout facilities, for you find yourself within the sovereign of the nefarious, and you will find more fogs than you shall know how to repel or avoid or evade. And this last dismal anecdote just now about the boys in the locker room, I'm going to hold on. And this last dismal anecdote just now about the boys in the locker room, the dismal suggestion, the dismal solicitation, the dismal subject of its dismal recollection, has reminded me of another dismal episode, which, it now surprises me, has eluded my citation heretofore, because it was disturbing, and it disturbs me still. I shudder for what even its most innocent potential portends. And I think this gripe, this tilt shall be, I think it shall be my last. Well, that is, except that Hispanic culture loves vicious cock and dog fighting, because they're all a bunch of hyper-violent savages, and their violent proclivity towards animals traces back to Spain, which is Catholic as well. So fuck Spain also, where barbaric bullfighting is still practiced and celebrated. And that on these prison gang documentary programs on A&E, which ironically men in prison would watch all the time, whenever they showcase an Hispanic prison gang, 100 times in 30 minutes, the gang is shown on the prison yard posing together for a yearbook picture, like a squad of cheerleaders. One row squatting, the next row hunched over, the top row erect with arms crossed, but so that each girl can get her face into the frame of the photo, and so to capture forever these best days, weeks, months, years, decades, these best times of their lives spent in prison breaking in new fish and raping fresh meat during their life sentences. And that too often, even just one time being far too frequent. But too often, daytime soaps on Telemundo have some gross, wrinkled, disgusting, reprehensible old goblin dressed like Dennis the Menace, being bawdy and suggestive and lewd, with some of the most undeniably gorgeous women in the entire world, which fantastic females are all, seemingly, surely, undoubtedly, no less than a half-century the junior of these same geriatric ghouls, just reinforcing, like, old man, little girl, central phallicism amongst that culture. An all-American media portrayal of Hispanics is ruthless violent, yet they never refute or contest it because they love their fearsome charactery. And blacks protect and jealously guard their depicted image, for they were once too often frightful by depiction, and not nearly like their vast reality. And then, the blacks, you whites, you hate, not just for the big endowed anatomy by which blacks are stereotyped, or because you brought them here and could no longer own them, but because blacks don't come unto you as with offering, and entreat you with the flesh of their children, like this hick does, so to infiltrate and castrate you. Those are all impersonal, though. So besides those, and as pertaining to evidence from my own personal experience, this I think shall be my final gripe, the last lance of my charge, so to speak. Albeit that chronologically, among all these morbid indictments, it occurred first of all after the crucial crux when I came here to sojourn at my aunt's house in Yorkville. For I had already ceased my equine, except that I'm reminded of this quiet little trauma, which transpired at the very first that I arrived in this fox den to stay, and immediately too dyed rotten green-gray-yellow this abysmal, sordid Yorkville. But I suppose it's convenient that I shall soon conclude, for I've not much further before I've reached my destination. Oh, right. Remember that I'm driving. So, imagine some traffic lights. Too many over such short span. And stuff like street signs. And crackling, crumbling asphalt infrastructure. Throw enough of that in, too. Be abundant with that detail. Gratuitous. Magnanimous. At any rate, though, in that I'm not far now from the casino, our vague vehicle, the pretense that keeps my monologue moving, the dubious context of my traveling narration, this spurious abstract, it too shall soon adjourn, and should cease transmission with the halting transition of my transmission. And I say convenient because it fits well, as though crafted for the purpose. The two events, however, of course, my arrival at the casino and when I shall conclude, though they shall neatly coincide, yet they're hardly coincidental, according to common usage, because usage demands an unanticipated element to concurrence, a randomness, which our convenient culmination lacks, for I impose the latter. But I could linger in my aunt's car and prolong conjecture and expand technicality and exhaust all empiricism, if so I chose to, because there were, in fact, Hispanics parallel to the horrors around Holliday's Lake, whose presence I could dissect and assign speculation, for truly even at the time they struck me as not without significance. And on my high school varsity soccer team, I played alongside an Hispanic immigrant. Broken English, long cocaine nail on his pinky finger, the works. I even saw him a couple years ago at Walmart. Some while within the work of these wheels, and well past when things were already become way weirder around my whereabouts. Yet its mention is all its measure. No, but this will be it. Somehow seems ordained, though. My delayed and now sudden remembrance of the troubling incident. Like I'm the character of a craftsman more cunning than myself, because I'm not that strategic. Yet how so shrewdly do I conclude? Not because that it happened first among these foul frustrations, since shacking up in this awful fog factory, but only mere yards away from the Goodwill store, where occurred the latest, with the scrawny cockroach hick and his gross esposa and the beautiful blonde behind the register. My most recent complaint, prior to this morning that is, when at the Plasma Center on this my birthday, I started off my new year on the wrong foot right away, but just days ago, earlier this week, the rerun. That's a coincidence. Well, rather, the vicinity has a coincidental quality to it, I suppose, to have hosted the two events, albeit not simultaneously, and which were separate, though not necessarily independent of each other, for I'm either right and they're connected at the catalyst, or I'm wrong and things were all random. Nor would it be hardly more than clever, I guess, to wrap up this bleak conjecture where it began, on the day in question, and go around full circle to the front of this week where my last and most recent gripe transpired. No. But for the two establishments, which provided perfect backdrop to this sick scene.